Hello, good morning, and welcome to another episode of What Do We Do Now? A conversation about the live events industry and what happens next. Today, I'm joined by top Paul Dawson. Paul, say hello and introduce yourself.
Hello, Dave. I'm Paul Dawson. I'm an executive producer and project director in the live events industry.
Fantastic. And just tell us a brief potted history, like where did you start and how did you get into it, and sort of who are the main kind of how long you've been freelance and have you been full time, and just give us a little bit of a flavor of your journey.
Well, I'm creative, as most people in the events industry are. I went to art college to do graphic design, and got led into computer graphics. The first computer graphics computers. Ended up working in TV studios, helping established TV graphic designers to use the new technology. Liked it. Did a TV design course for 2 years. Came out of college and yeah, worked in live television. Did live sports coverage. Um, PJ European Tour, the golf, and 3 day eventing, all those sort of things. Really enjoyed it. Got to direct multi-camera shoots and travel all over the place, doing wonderful events, be a
Fantastic.
cameraman and all that sort of thing. And then but I love the live side. So when I tried video production as a video producer, it took the live event, the live TV producing into video producing. I found it really quite dull by comparison, and then got into live events through producing content and videos for live events, and then found that's what I loved, and I've been doing that ever since. Yeah, 35 over 35 years of live events. I've been, yeah, really enjoyed it.
Fantastic. And how's your diary looking now? I mean, mine's completely emptied out in terms of production management for the moment, with nothing much in for the foreseeable future other than, pitching things and costing things. How is it for you?
Well, I'm the same. I do. I make sure I produce and deliver events every year, but I also work on a lot of pitches and tenders and creatives and so on as well. And I have one due to come in, which will keep me busy for 2 or 3 weeks. And luckily, I had one right at the beginning, which sort of got me in sort of 3 weeks or a month into this. But yeah, I was supposed to be doing Beijing Motor Show, so that didn't happen.
No. So was
So
that
so
your
yeah.
sort of first sign that things were disappearing for you?
Well, it's funny because I was booked to do it, and I was in the process of sorting out the visa again, because mine for China had lapsed, and uh, I knew it wasn't going to happen. I knew it was, and I took another pitch actually, and they were late because they were talking to the client backwards and forwards, and everybody was delaying the inevitable. And then I got the call to say yes, it had been cancelled. So yeah, you know it's kind of obvious really, but it was the first to go. And unfortunately, I think events will be the last to come out of this pandemic as well, from an economic restart point of view.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely. And in terms of, I guess, changes and what might be different afterwards, like, do you have any thoughts on, or are you starting to see in any of the work that you're pitching for any fundamental changes to either how you have to work or the types of projects you might be delivering?
well, I think obviously in the short term there'll be very few brands that will be brave enough to bring a body of people together and risk the potential of being blamed for restarting the pandemic. So in the short term, it's bad, it's bleak. In the Although obviously there are still online events happening, which is fine for content and content creators and so on. But obviously for the majority of the logistics and all of the kind of the event industry, the build elements and so on, yeah, it's pretty dire. So it will start to recover gradually. It will be slow and it will take a long time to come out. I, I guess. I mean, I'm not
No,
not a
no, for sure.
soothsayer,
I guess if
clairvoyant, but I
we,
think it's that I think we can say we'll be last to come out of it, won't we?
I
Us and
think
the
so.
poor airlines, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
Yeah.
guess looking back to either the financial crisis or to 9/11, I mean, those situations both had quite a big impact on our industry. Do you think this will be bigger, sort of worse, longer? Like, I guess it's quite a broad-reaching situation, this one. What are your thoughts on how it might compare to what we went through in previous years?
Well, we use that word unprecedented. It's a first global issue. before there's been problems and areas, and you could just move industry, or you could move region. You could, if there's problems in Europe, you could go to the Middle East, or to America.
Mm.
Well, there was always somewhere you could move to, and if there was problems in the recession in the private sector, you could work on government sector work. You could always adapt and move. Sport, normally keeps going and flourishes. So, you know, this one's unusual, and it's hit everything. It shrunk well, I say the entire economy. It shrunk the global economy, but obviously there are some winners that rise out of it. A lot of the IT tech, Zoom, Facebook, Google, Instagram, um, food retailers. There are some winners in it. So yeah, it's going to distort things for a while. But I think history shows that people being people, they soon forget, and it goes back to normal. Eventually, it
Yeah,
might be a
absolutely.
new normal, and there's a new awareness, and people are more used to using clients, and our audiences are more used to using Zoom and other forms um, of networking and so on. So they're more open to those sort of suggestions, perhaps. So it will change things, but I think it will go back. You can't beat live experiential. If people work more from home and less in their offices, which obviously as an industry we've always done, we can work remotely. We've always worked. Wherever we lay our hat is where we work in, and we can
Yeah.
move to any agency, any office, any desk, any venue, and we can set up and get going and concentrate and deliver projects that are really complex and challenging. And obviously the rest of the population are now learning to do the same.
Yeah,
um, so
absolutely.
that could be.
Is there anything that you think could be better, things that could be different in a good way, for any all sorts of reasons?
uh, yes, I think people can probably say the fact that people be more familiar with the tech, and with trying to make things more interesting and being more creative with content. They'll probably appreciate that more. I think experiential will go up in value enormously, because I think people are going to be hankering for getting back together and having experiential events. I mean, the high street was dying anyway, so the
Mm.
way of shopping online is always on a growth, and that will continue. So I think it's not going to be viable to run shops. You have to run experiential environments where people come experience a brand and then perhaps go away and buy online. That was happening anyway. I think every live event has a digital element to it. It has a live streaming element to it anyway. So I think that will just carry on. I think there'll be maybe global events where people might say, well, let's have them regionally. Bring all the, if it's a business to business, bring them all together nationally, but then connect them globally, so that you have a part live experience and a part online experience. But you can't replace actually being there. You can't replace actually seeing a band live, going to a festival,
It's that kind
going
of
to a sport.
personal shared experience, isn't it? It's that it's not just meeting people for networking, but it's actually sharing something, having something in common through that kind of unique experience, right?
Yeah, 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 and we've seen, sadly, with the young generation who are more wedded to their digital devices, it does not make them happier. It does not make them a happier generation or happier people. Whereas going to a party, to a festival, to a live event, it does make you happier. You do enjoy it. So I think if more companies decide to let people work from home, I think if you're experienced in your field and you know your team and you've worked together, the working from home's not that damaging. It's fine. It works well. We all do it. But I think if you're starting out or you're younger and you need guidance and you need support and you need camaraderie and you need to go out and socialize and so on a lot more, which you do when you're younger. And I think so. It's a younger generation. They will need to keep that going. You can't just make everybody work, or you can't just have everybody working at home. You need to work as teams and bring those units together. So I think there'll be, if they do carry on and have more working from home, um, and smaller offices, which people talked about, more hot desking, to reduce companies' overheads, which is all a positive thing. I think there'll be more and more thirst for, then when the businesses do come together, that they are good experiences and then well managed events and so on. So yeah, so from that side, I see experiential getting bigger and better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So during this downtime, is there any kind of any advice or any thoughts that you might have had, or things you might be doing yourself, which you might be starting to do differently, or different ways that you're thinking about things that you could share with other producers that are in a similar kind of situation, things that they could be thinking about, or ideas that they could be exploring, either to upskill themselves or to just to learn about different ways of communicating, maybe through the virtual events or online events, that type of thing. Like, what are your thoughts on what people should be spending their time doing right now?
Well, there's lots of terrific training being given and offered, in many cases for free online. I know CT of Creative Technology have done some great courses, and I've done one of those, which I wanted to learn more about internet technology and connectivity, which is a bit of a black art sometimes. So it's just good to, as a producer, I think you have to have a good understanding of everything. I think the more understanding you have and the appreciation that you have of the challenges for the lighting designer or for the guys doing Wi-Fi or whatever it is, then I think then you can better lead and direct them,
Mm.
and budget it and everything else. So I think, yeah, the more tools in your toolbox. I'm learning SketchUp. I mean, I've used SketchUp to um, map out venues and to test them out and to look at sight lines and things like that. So I do use SketchUp, but I'm taking it to another level so I can do it in more detail and so on.
In terms
So
of
yeah.
sorry, in terms of content, I suppose, and how you develop content and how you work through a narrative um, for the audience online, perhaps, or like, do you think that audiences online engage with content differently? Are you kind of working on proposals where people are trying to do an 8-hour day conference, or are people starting to think more widely about how to communicate in the way that people consume content online? Do you have any thoughts around any of that?
Yeah, I think clients need guidance. I think Geneva Motor Show switched to online quite last minute. To be fair to all of them, so a lot of them actually carried out their press conference as it was planned, as it was scripted, and they carried that out online. And boy, was it dull!
Oh no.
Yeah, I
So,
mean,
so what was it
absolutely.
that made it dull? And what are the sorts of things that people could look out for as they're designing content?
Well, I think, when you're putting together online content, it needs to be a lot more concise. It needs to be, you need to have stings and bumpers, and you need to have cutaway material. It's boring looking at a talking head like this now for too long.
Yeah, it keeps
Whereas
cutting back and forward to me and my ugly mug, but it's just to try and keep it a little bit more interesting.
me and my lack of haircut due to lockdown, yeah, which we're all getting very, very hairy. But yeah, I think, yeah, the content creation, you've got to think of and it's not a TV program either. It's quite interesting. I subscribe to Outside the Box, which is a comedy thing put on by Math Brown, and he gets we go to Kingston, we watch live comedians, and they're trying out their craft and trying out their material, and he gets some really top name um, comedians come to that, and he's moved that online. We watched it the first couple of weeks, and it was quite sad watching stand up trying to do the same thing in front of their laptop in their
Mm,
living room,
mm.
and it doesn't work. And each week you can see them, they've evolved, they've got better, they're changing it in the way that they do it. And it's got better and better this week. This week was amazing, it was really, really good, and I think next week's will be good as well. So I think, the way you structure the content, the stories, the live chats, the interaction, the Q&As, everything. It can be far more engaging, two-way, complex. I love doing events. I mentioned to you earlier, which is the one we did in Africa, where we actually wanted It was launching a telecoms network coast to coast across all the countries across Africa with no roaming fees. So that was the whole thing. So we wanted to do the same with the event. We wanted to literally go across Africa without any barrier. So we had a live event in every country. We had live musicians from each country performing, and the audiences loved their events. They loved the atmosphere, but they also were linking up to all the other countries across Africa via the big screen, via satellite. So it had the best of both worlds. You had an amazing event in location, but you also felt part of a much bigger uh, um, experience, and much, there was a lot of pride in that. And every time we cut to another country, they all cheered and went crazy and so on. And this was staff. It was it was a business event. So it was, and I think that that's really, really good. So if you have a live link, or if you're doing something online, then you can still have an event at the end of the camera. You can still have an audience in the studio. You can still have a performance going on, um, and put your CEO in one location and your FD in another location, your marketing director, and cut between them and involve those audiences who are with them as well as the entire audience. Um, I've always
Yeah,
loved that.
brilliant.
We've been doing that anyway. I just think more of that sort of thing will happen, and
Yeah,
it'll be
almost more events, more regional stuff, but kind of smaller,
yeah.
more contained, and then yeah, trying to engage the online audience. I'm aware we're running out of time a little bit here, but it's fascinating conversation. I think we could do like a whole piece just focused on content and the differences and the different ways you might want to engage your audiences and how online audiences respond to different kinds of content. But if I just had one last question, what is the best piece of advice either you were ever given or that you could give to someone else, just in terms of how you approach work? What was the best piece of advice you can comes to mind?
I don't know. And reputation is all. You're only as good as your last piece of work. All of those different things are very, very important in our industry. Contacts are vital.
Yeah, yeah.
Loyalty. We're a great and talented, experienced industry. Being prudent. Sometimes I feel I should be more entrepreneurial, but I've been prudent in my life. And you see, some agencies have been prudent, and some have been more, taking risks and so on. And I'm
Yeah, yeah.
talking about from a business sense, not from a creative sense. Always take risks with a creative, because that's what expands ideas. But I think, the survivors out of this will be ones that do own their own premises, that have got money and support behind them.
Mm.
Unfortunately, ones that have overstretched and or it's just caught them at a bad time in their cycle of growth and so on. That they're the ones that unfortunately are more likely to suffer. So just be more durable. Um, you know, keep your
Yeah, I
CV
think
up to date. Keep your portfolio up to date. That's always been a good one. It's amazing how many people don't, and they let it lapse. But yeah, in our industry, I think it's key.
perfect. Well, thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to kind of chat with us on this, and we'd love to hear from different people within the industry. So please get in touch either using the comments below if you are up for joining some of these. We're going to try and do a few in future as a bit more panel discussions, so it's not just me, and there's a little bit more conversation between different people that are involved. So thank you very much to you, Paul. If you just want to say thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, Dave, and goodbye. Thanks a lot. Take care. Good luck, everybody. Stay safe.
Cheers, Paul. Bye bye, everybody.